Now we're talking about transitive and intransitive verbs, and this is something that you really have to understand in order to use passive voice. Many verbs need a direct object in order to be complete. We call these verbs transitive verbs. So scientists have discovered a new planet. This is the subject and the verb and the direct object. I cannot say scientists have discovered. Okay, there needs to be an object. Or someone took my book. Someone is the subject, verb is took, direct object is my book. So I don't just say someone took. That's not a complete sentence because that verb is transitive and must have a direct object. Okay, most but not all transitive verbs can be used with a passive form. So I say a new planet has been discovered. Means somebody has discovered a new planet. Here's the subject and the verb. My book was taken. Means somebody took my book, but in the passive, this is the subject and this is the verb. This is passive in present perfect. This is passive in simple past. Some verbs make sense without an object. These verbs, called intransitive verbs, cannot be used with a passive form. So everyone arrived early, or something happened. Okay, this is an adverb and it's not an object. Okay, this verb doesn't have an object. This verb does not have an object. So those verbs cannot be used in the passive voice. Only transitive verbs can be passive. Okay, we can use many verbs both transitively and intransitively. When you look a verb up in the dictionary, you will see symbols that mean it's either transitive or it's intransitive, or it can be either one. And here is a verb that can be transitive or intransitive. We're going to smoke the fish. Okay, means we're going to use smoke to preserve the fish. And here's your subject, your verb, and your direct object. But if I say that pile of leaves is smoking, there is no object and it's intransitive. Another example is if I say I am studying English, then study is transitive with an object. But I can say I'm studying, and that's a perfectly good sentence by itself with no object. And in that situation, in that situation, I'm using study as an intransitive verb. Okay, often the transitive and intransitive uses of the same verb may have different meanings. So if I say, I can't run, I'm too tired. This is the intransitive verb, and here's the runner. But if I say the same family has run the company for 50 years, then this means operated the company, and this is a transitive use with the direct object company. The company has been run by the same family for 50 years, and here it is in the passive. Only when you're using the transitive meaning of the verb can you use a passive form. Okay, some transitive verbs can have two objects, an indirect object and a direct object. And here's an example. These are all verbs that can work that way. Okay, I asked him a favor. Okay, he gave me a pen. I offered him some advice. You can hear that there are two objects happening there. They use this word ditransitive verbs. Di means two. Okay, some transitive verbs can have two objects, an indirect object and a direct object. And with many of these verbs, the indirect object can come before or after the direct object. So someone gave the library a lot of books. This is the indirect object. This is the direct object. Or another thing I can say that means the same thing is someone gave a lot of books to the library. And here's the direct object and the indirect object. You can see the indirect object, when it comes second, often has a preposition. With the verbs above or before, either the indirect object or the direct object can become the subject of a passive sentence. However, it's more common for the direct object to become the subject. But if I have the active sentence, someone gave the library a lot of books, I can take the library, the indirect object, to become the subject of the passive sentence. The library was given a lot of books. Okay, and I can also take the direct object and use that to be the subject of a passive sentence and say a lot of books were given to the library. And here are some common errors that people make. Students often write this. They thought she was died. Die is an active, intransitive verb, and you can say they thought she died or they thought she was dead. Here, this is an adjective. Okay, these things were happened on Friday evening. Okay, happen is intransitive, so there's never going to be were for a passive. These things happened on Friday evening. The paintings appeared, okay, several people. Appear is not transitive, it's intransitive. So you have to say several people, active voice, subject, verb, and then in the paintings. Appear cannot be used as in the passive voice. 3 people injured in the accident. In this case, injured is transitive. Something injured these 3 people. So you would use this in the passive voice. 3 people were injured. Something injured the 3 people. And the little red marks are for incorrect sentences, and the green checks are for correct sentences.